According to the latest money and credit data of the Central Bank of Nigeria for the month of May 2024, the federal government of Nigeria has borrowed in such a way that it has increased to the tune of over 8.4 trillion naira. That means that the federal government has borrowed in the increase of about 8.4 trillion naira. Now, when compared to the amount borrowed by businesses and individuals in the country, the Nigerian government has borrowed six times higher during the same period. In the next couple of minutes, I and my guest on the show today will look at this and one other issue. Good evening and welcome to MarketSquare. My name is Oluwapelubi Awe, and I'm so pumped to welcome you to the show tonight. Let me set the stage before my guest joins me on the show. So the CBN report shows that credit to government account for 86% of fresh domestic credit, which automatically means that the government relies more on local borrowing to fund its expenditure. Now, on a monthly basis, credit to the government rose by 30% to about 28.38 trillion naira in May 2024 from what it was, which was about 19.98 trillion naira in the month of April 2024. Now, while credit to the private sector increased by 2%, just 2%, from 72.92 trillion naira in April to around 74.31 trillion naira in the month of May 2024. Now, if you compare that on a year-on-year basis, credit to the private sector rose at a higher rate of about 66% from 44.79 trillion naira in May last year to 74.31 trillion naira in the same month in 2024. Now, you saw that Paul flashed something on the screen the other time with regards to the report as per the fact, yes, put it up again, yes, that the government's credit surged by 8.4 trillion naira in the month of May 2024. So let's discuss this drastic difference in credit between the government and the private sector. My guest today is a business analyst. Please welcome with me on the show today, Mr. Oluwatosin Babajide. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, good evening.
Absolutely.
Babajide.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show tonight.
You're welcome.
So you heard me speak about the fact that the government borrowing as such dwarfed, in some press, some newspaper headlines says dwarfed the private sector borrowing in the month of May 2024. I want to ask you, what could have caused these increased borrowing on the part of the government of Nigeria in just a month?
Okay, thank you very much. One thing I would say is a government cannot survive with borrowing. The more you borrow, the more danger you are putting into the economy. Now, what could have caused this? Number one, I would say misplaced priorities. Now, this government does not really know what they want to, so they borrow for frivolities, things that are not necessary at the moment. So the best they can do, they need to know and set their priorities right. Looking at May 2024 till now, the rate of borrowing now, let's look, what are they really borrowing for? When they analyze it, they want to claim that, oh, we are borrowing for infrastructure development. Now, this infrastructure development, are we seeing them? Are they things that we can really pinpoint in the society that say, oh, this thing is really working? And they keep borrowing to service other loans, which is endangering the economy. So part of the things that we need to know is when we keep borrowing, we are bringing the economy down and we are not doing good for for the lives of the citizen. Looking at the exchange rates too, the exchange rate is not smiling at anybody. So borrowing at this point from May till now has brought us down and reduced our value. Looking at the report of Business Day, our GDP for last month till now is about 40% into loan. We are paying loan out of our GDP, and it's 40% on the high side. So the remaining 60%, what can it really do looking at the current economy? So borrowing at this point is endangering the economy. That's just what I want to say on that, sir.
Okay, well, I think you also mentioned very clearly while answering the question that the fact that the government has borrowed so far so good, and we are not seeing the corresponding impact of what has been borrowed is an issue, because if
At
you
all, we are
borrow
not seeing.
and then people are still suffering, the price of foodstuffs are still high, and then you were saying that, and that can already just give a very bad body language to say, we don't think this borrowing works in great extent. Now, on the part of private, on part of the business owners, for instance, so in some Sena clans, when you have it that in any economy, the business owners should be the ones even borrowing more, because they're the ones that need the money to be able to fund their businesses, need the money to be able to power what they do, so that they can employ more people. So I'm going to ask you now, what do you think is the issue? Why do you have private business owners running away from borrowing in this season, given the report by the CBN?
Now, okay, thank you for that. What is making the private owners run now is high interest rate. What is the interest rate they are giving them per borrowing? Per dollar, how much are they to pay back? If I'm going to borrow 30 million naira, how much am I paying back? Now they are giving them an interest rate of about 30%, 35%. How will that business survive? Even if they use for other businesses, what is their profit? And are they not back with their profits? So this will be a discouragement for them to go into borrowing, because they will have difficulties paying back. Now, aside from that, they want to streamline their business, laying people off just to survive. We see how the economy is now. Things are on the high side. Businesses are struggling to pay salaries. Now, still going into borrowing just to service that same business. It won't work. So it's not matching up on both ends. They can't go into borrowing and still struggle, because the money they had borrowed will still go into inflation. High interest rate also from who they are borrowing from. It will definitely eat into their profit, and they might not be able to survive. Now, aside from that, do they even have this access to those credits? Are banks giving them the avenues to come to borrow? When they listen to their conditions, they will definitely run away. So this will discourage them from going further in those kind of borrowing. And looking at the operational cost, what is the price of diesel today to run a business? Aside from that, looking at those internal costs, the personnel, the materials, the space they use, how much are they paying? Now, am I going to borrow just to fund all this without getting the assurance of making profit at the end of the day? And if I make the profit is still going into the interest rate that has been given to me from the bank or where I borrow from. So this will definitely discourage the people, the businesses to borrow. It will definitely discourage them.
Okay.
So,
okay. Would you say that, just so that we're exact as to our answer, would you say that the fact that the government has borrowed more than the private individuals, would you say that's a good thing? That's a good thing that has happened, or you would have preferred that it's the other way around?
Okay, I would have preferred that it's the other way around. That businesses borrow, at least economy will survive with private businesses. But now it is the government that is borrowing just for things that are not necessary presently in the economy, and we are not even seeing the effect. Assuming the private organization have this access to borrowing, they will do more. They will empower more people, they will employ, and they will be more productive. And this will have an effect on the economy. But now the government is the one doing it. So it's having an adverse effect on the economy rather than the opposite side. I mean, the private borrowing for them to empower more people, because it is the private that are definitely doing more in the economy rather than the government.
Well, now when you were speaking the other time, you mentioned with regards to the interest rate. Mr. Lingo Dangote, when he was addressing the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, mentioned that the fact that you have about 30% interest rate there, that it won't encourage investors, it will encourage private individuals to even create more jobs. And if you then ask the CBN governor, why is it that they've raised over time about over 750 basis points, to the extent that the monetary policy rate is now way, way higher than it used to be. He would say to you that he did that because himself and his team decided to bring down the level at which the price of things were going. Inflation rate was really, really, really high. And so he said, he would say to you that move had to be made. Now, my question is this. What would you recommend? Would you say that the fact that the government, the CBN, raised the monetary policy rate over 700 basis points was the good thing to do? And would you also say that in the next meeting happening later this month, I think around 21st, 22nd of July 2024, that the CBN should raise it higher or bring it lower than it is already?
Okay, to balance the equation, I will advise that it is brought down at least to 10% or even 5%, just to balance the inflation rate. As I've said earlier, what's the point of me borrowing money and I still use the interest on that money to still service loan without getting a sustainable profit? So they should bring it lower to balance the inflation rate. At least if everything is stabilized, we can now say, oh, at this point, we'll look at the SMEs, we'll look at the medium-sized enterprises, we'll provide them with intervention funds. From there, everything will be normalized. But at this point, I'm not sure we are moving higher. The more the interest rate is higher, 750 points is not good for the economy. It's going to bring us down, and the inflation will keep rising. On the before the end of this month, prices of things will still go higher if the economy is still like this. So the best thing for them to do is to bring it down, for everything to be stabilized, and not depend solely on borrowing. We should try to work on our own economy too. What are we producing to assist the economy? The moment we start asking ourselves critical questions like this, we see that the economy will start moving forward. But at this point, the CBN does not have anything good by increasing the interest rate rather than damaging the economy.
Okay, now my final question for you, Mr. Tosi, on the show today. You've mentioned some solid points there as the fact that I think some people watching this right now would debate your suggestion that the CBN should bring it down to about 5%, because they're saying so far so good. We have seen the impact of the increased monetary policy rate that has been done. Whilst it looks very hard and harsh to say, how can you increase the monetary policy rate by over 700 basis points within 4 months? In about 3 meetings, they increased it to that much. Some will argue with you that has impacted the economy in some way. Some of that will agree with you that it should be brought down. Maybe not to 5%, maybe not to 10%, maybe something around 20%, maybe something around 15%. Yeah, so that private individuals can borrow more money, and then we can have more jobs being created. So we have people on both sides. Now I'm going to ask you the final question on the show today, that so what balance would you suggest? Because again, we're going to get into we're in the month of July already. Hopefully we're going to get the report for the month of June later in this month. What balance would you suggest? Would you suggest that, I think you mentioned while you were speaking, that private individuals be given some level of preference than the government is getting with respect to borrowing? We've seen that the government, so far so good, has sold out its treasury bills. In fact, I have it here that the number of fixed income investors have oversubscribed for the treasury bills, and it looks very, very positive for the government. But again, the Nigerian government is borrowing so much that there is the fear that the government may not be able to meet up with its payback time and all of that. So what balance would you suggest? Would you suggest that the government slows down in its borrowing effort? And would you suggest that private individuals borrow more? Or what would your say on this be?
Okay, yeah, I would suggest that the private individuals should be given preference to borrow more, because I think the private individuals are better managers than the government. The government borrow for what? For infrastructure that we don't see, for things they flaunt around that we don't see. So if they create a balance by empowering the private individuals more, they will know how to manage their business better and giving them a very good interest rate to pay back that won't eat into their business, and for them to empower the economy, creating more jobs, giving people avenue to be engaged doing one thing or the other. But without that, the government will only borrow and keep borrowing, and the money being borrowed will used to be servicing other loans, other problems, instead of facing the real problem of inflation within the economy. So the private individuals, the private businesses should be given preferences, and everything, they should give them a reasonable interest rate. You have made a very good suggestion of 15 to 20%. It can be around that. 5 to 10 might be too low, but we should look at the size of the businesses and look at their strengths, their value, before giving them the best interest rates in the long run.
Well, it's a no-brainer that in every economy you need the private individuals to be favored in terms of borrowing, because they are better managers, like you mentioned already, and that you can trace their impact, because somebody who borrows money to do business wants to make profit and will ensure that the money goes to the right places. And so we're hoping that the government, when they get to see this video, get to know that private individuals should be given preference, and also the government should slow down on its borrowing, because this is going to affect the future generation when they have to now pay back the money that has been borrowed. Some days back, some weeks ago, I did an episode on the fact that the World Bank borrowed Nigeria recently with over $2 billion. And I've said that Nigeria can pay back, I think, within 40 years or so. So if that is the case, I know that by that time, Tinubu would have gone to be with God in glory. You know,
so
all
if I have an unborn child now, in 40 years' time, the child should be ready to pay back the loan he or she does not even know about. That's the implication.
Yeah.
So they are digging the deep a great I don't even know what to use to qualify it now. They are digging a well for the future generation. So the best thing to do is to correct it now. We should not leverage on borrowing, start producing from here, empowering the private individuals, because they have a good foresight, and any private business will emphasize, we think of making profit, and those profits can be better used in the economy. And these are the only things that can bring down inflation. If not, if we keep depending on the government, they will just drive us to a place of no return.
It's been an incredible time with you, Mr. Oluwatosin Babajide, on the show today. Thank you for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. Now let's do the numbers. The all-share index fell marginally yesterday by 0.004%, which is around 0.4 basis points to close at 99,802.08 points, following a 0.20% drop on Tuesday that pulled the index below 100,000 mark to 99,805.95 points. Investors sustained a loss of 2.18 billion naira, with market capitalization at 56.46 trillion naira, and year-to-date return at 33.47%. According to the Customs Exchange Rate Portal, the exchange rate for import duties by the Nigeria Customs Service continues to rise as it hits 1,549 to 49 naira per dollar. This represents an increase of 37 naira from the previous rate of 1,512 naira per dollar. However, this month, the CBN has already adjusted the exchange rate for customs duty collection 7 good times. Today is the 11th, I believe, 11th of July 2024. And the CBN already has changed, adjusted the exchange rate by 7 times, just 10 days into, 11 days into the month of July 2024. The NatFest rate depreciated yesterday by 0.83% from 1,521.76 naira per dollar to 1,534.51 naira per dollar. While the Bureau de change rate also depreciated by 0.26% from 1,524 naira per dollar to 1,528 naira per dollar. With an 18-month extension on the closing date of the World Bank's $800 million palliative loan. A bit of the story. So, no fewer than 3 million poor and vulnerable households have benefited from the $800 million palliative loan disbursed by the World Bank. Now, on the screen, you have the time when this loan was disbursed, and you can tell already that it wasn't the president at this time that was there at the time. It was President Muhammadu Buhari who was on seat at the time this loan was disbursed. And this was the announcement made. This was when the announcement was made by the president as to the fact that the loan has been gotten, and there had some comment from the officials on ground at the time. Now, of the beneficiaries, you have about 700,000 households who are going to be selected from rural areas, and about 2.5 million households were going to be gotten from urban areas. Now, about 30 million beneficiaries have been covered by social safety net program, and about 3 million poor and vulnerable households have received shock responsive cash transfers as at May 2024. So it was a project passed on by President Muhammadu Buhari from his tenure to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at this time. And I'm guessing some persons who are watching this right now may have even gotten the money sent. Okay, you got an alert on your phone. You didn't tell anybody, but you got an alert on your phone, and this must have been from the World Bank disbursing $800 million to the government to be able to ensure that households, poor households, vulnerable households are being catered for. You're wondering how they are able to know that you need money. So I'm also thinking about that too. I'm saying, while I was thinking about this, how did the government even get to know the people who need the money? I'm guessing they had the system to track people's account numbers, how much comes in every single month before making the transfer happen. Now, this was supposed to ensure that the government policies with respect to fuel subsidy removal and other strategic moves are being catered for, because we're still at the moment feeling the impact of the fuel subsidy removal by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and also the idea to also liberalize the exchange rate space there, ensuring that it's a willing buyer, willing seller basis. According to a restructuring paper documented and sent to the World Bank, the Nigerian government has requested to extend the closing date of the project from June 30th, 2024 to December 31st, 2025. Now, the reasons they gave for this was for the repurposing of the realignment of the project the timeline, and also to ensure that there is a comprehensive implementation of project activities. Nigeria is presently battling with high inflation, which is very, very clear. In fact, it peaked in the month of May to about 33.95%. There was the removal of gasoline subsidies and also the unified foreign exchange policies, while beneficiaries in the long run have heightened this impact. The impact of the money given to them to a very good extent has reduced the impact of the many policies being rolled out by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Yesterday, if you read in the news, you must have read how that President Obasanjo spoke to gave a speech and confronted the president with regards to the fact that you don't have to stifle, you don't have to choke the people because you want to make their life better. But this is about the World Bank's palliative loan to the government with respect to helping to ensure that the people in vulnerable places, people who are vulnerable, get some level of support for in this season. With that increase, more persons have been pushed out of poverty and also positioned to an extent where they can now live a sustainable life and even do better for themselves. Now, to mitigate the adverse impact effect of the inflation and other government policies, the government plans subsequently to reach out to 15 million households and with 75,000 naira in terms of temporary cash transfers being disbursed 3 months, monthly, 3 months on a row. So you have, let's say, for instance, they've disbursed already, like I said already on the show, disbursed already. And then let's say somebody who's going to get money in June, got money in June. Somebody gets money in July, somebody gets money in August, and then that's fine. That's 75,000 naira per month to be able to sustain yourself and help yourself improve. So the federal government of Nigeria now has reached out to the World Bank to say, we need you to kindly help us to extend the duration of disbursing this, because we may not be able to meet with the timeline. Was it yesterday? It was yesterday. I read in the news how that the World Bank sanctioned a particular country in Africa with regards to the fact that the country did not pay back the loan given to them as expected. They didn't give back. You see that put up on the screen in the moment. Paul will put up that in a moment later as to the fact that they were not able to pay back the money as discussed with the World Bank there. So the World Bank had to sanction them to an extent and, say some things to them. And this is why the Nigerian government is reaching out to this World Bank to ensure that the World Bank is aware of the fact that they might need some more time before they're able to disburse the money to people who are vulnerable and need money to be able to improve themselves. Now, so far, so good. Only about 39.38% of the entire loan has been released to Nigeria, as there is a pending balance of about $485 million. The World Bank doesn't every time release the money at once. So they look at how well you've done with the money they've given to you before they're able to give you the rest. Remember that it's not a giveaway. It's a loan given to Nigeria to be able to ensure that they're able to meet and help people who are vulnerable to get better. And this requested extension by the government of Nigeria aims to be able to provide additional time for ruling out and managing the cash transfers, as well as strengthening the social safety net and also the delivery system in Nigeria. If you ask me, what do you think about this? That the federal government of Nigeria is asking that the World Bank gives it some more time to ensure that, let's say from 30th of June 2024 till 2025, asking for this time frame, I would say it's okay. Because we know our government as a government that may not be able, has not proven to be able to manage things like this when under pressure. And it's only good that they're given that time to be able to ensure that it's efficient. So for me, it's about efficiency, and about it getting to the right people and making the right effect. Okay, efficiency, getting to the right people and making the right impact. Well, on the show today, we've had time to discuss with Mr. Oluwatosin Babajide, who is a business analyst, and we spoke extensively with regards to the fact that the CBN report that the government borrowed more money than private sector in the month of May 2024, and what impact that would have. Have we seen the impact of the money borrowed already? And then why private individuals are not borrowing and what the government can do going forward to ensure that they borrow. I've also spoken to you about the federal government requesting the World Bank to help ensure that, to give the approval that so that they are able to extend the moment or the period of distribution of the money borrowed to the people who need the money, to ensure that the distribution is efficient and the goal of that exercise is well achieved. Thank you for joining me today on the show. My name is Oluwakwelumi. Do have to follow us on all our social media platforms. If you want economic updates, if you want political updates, if you want social updates, you need to follow us on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and even on TikTok to get updates as soon as they happen. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a good night rest.